Everyone called my husband a dream, the kind of man women whispered about and men admired. But every night when the front door locked behind us, I prayed he would fall asleep before he spoke, because the man the world loved was the same man slowly destroying me. In public, my husband wasn't just good, he was exceptional. He remembered birthdays, held doors, spoke softly to elders, posted pictures of us smiling, captions filled with words like blessed and grateful. At restaurants, he'd pull my chair out and say, "Take care of my wife," to the waiter, loud enough for everyone to hear. People watched us like we were a love story. Women smiled at me with that quiet envy. Men shook his hand with respect. "You really won," my friends would say. "He's a real man." And I learned to smile on cue, to nod, to say thank you. What they didn't see was how silent I became once we got into the car, how my stomach tightened when his hand left mine, how my chest felt heavy before we even reached home. Because the moment the door closed, the applause stopped, the warmth drained from his voice, his smile disappeared like it was never real. "You embarrassed me back there," he'd say calmly, or "Why do you talk so much?" or "You should have worn something better." No yelling, no scenes, just words, precise, sharp, and calculated. I told myself it wasn't abuse. After all, he never raised his hand, he never cursed, so I kept the secret. I protected his image, and slowly I erased myself to do it. If you've ever smiled for people while breaking inside, stay with me. You're not weak and you're not alone. I didn't know yet that his cruelty followed a pattern, and I was about to learn the rules.
He had rules. He never called them that, but they existed. Rule 1. Everything was always my fault. If he was angry, I pushed him. If he ignored me, I talked too much. If he hurt me, I misunderstood. Rule 2. I was never allowed to be hurt. Whenever I tried to explain how I felt, he'd sigh deeply, like I was exhausting. "You're too sensitive. You overthink everything. You need to toughen up." And then came the sentence that changed everything. "At least I don't hit you." He said it like a gift, like proof of love, and somehow I believed I should be grateful. He controlled conversations without raising his voice, controlled money by calling it responsibility, controlled my emotions by convincing me they were the problem. If I cried, I was dramatic. If I stayed quiet, I was punishing him. If I stood up for myself, I was disrespectful. There was no right response, only wrong ones. I started rehearsing conversations in my head before speaking, started apologizing before arguments even began, started shrinking just to keep the peace. And the scariest part? He always sounded calm, reasonable, convincing, so convincing that I began to question my own memory, my own feelings, my own sanity. But the moment he humiliated me in front of others, I realized his mask wasn't slipping by accident. It happened at a dinner where everyone was laughing. Music was low, glasses clinked, conversations overlapped. I felt safe for a moment. Someone asked me about my job, and I answered confidently. Before I could finish, my husband laughed lightly and said, "She means well, but she's not very good with decisions. That's why I handle most things." People smiled. Someone chuckled. I froze. It wasn't what he said. It was how casually he erased me. Like my voice was a joke everyone was allowed to laugh at. I forced a smile because I didn't want to be that woman, the one who ruins the mood, the one who makes things uncomfortable. On the drive home, my heart pounded. I finally said, softly, "That really hurt my feelings." He didn't look at me, didn't raise his voice, didn't apologize. Instead, he said, "You're embarrassing yourself again." Then added, "Everyone else laughed. You're the only one offended." That's when the confusion crept in. Was I overreacting? Did I imagine the disrespect? By the time we reached home, I was apologizing for feeling hurt. If you've ever apologized for someone else's cruelty, stay. This story is for you.
That night, I realized humiliation was one of his favorite tools, and he knew exactly when to use it. After that night, something inside me shifted. I started replaying conversations in my head again and again, trying to figure out what I did wrong, what I should have said differently. When I brought things up later, he'd say, "I never said that," or "You're remembering it wrong," or worse, "You really need help." He said it with concern, with calm eyes and steady hands, so I believed him. I began doubting my memory, questioning my emotions, second-guessing every reaction. I stopped telling my friends details, stopped calling my family as often, not because he asked me to, but because explaining felt exhausting. Isolation didn't arrive suddenly. It arrived quietly, disguised as peace. I told myself, at least he's not violent, at least he provides, at least he looks good to everyone else. But inside, I was unraveling. I was lonely, even when he sat right next to me, afraid, even when he smiled, lost, even inside my own thoughts. And the scariest truth, he wasn't confused. I was. I didn't know it yet, but someone else was about to notice what I had been hiding.
I didn't notice myself disappearing all at once. It happened slowly, so slowly I didn't fight it. I stopped laughing the way I used to, stopped sharing opinions unless I was asked, stopped wearing things I loved because they attracted attention. Every decision became heavy. Every conversation felt like a test I could fail. Before speaking, I'd ask myself, will this upset him? Will this start something? Is it worth the tension? I learned how to read his moods better than my own, how to stay quiet at the right moments, how to make myself smaller to keep the peace. One morning, while brushing my teeth, I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the woman staring back. Her eyes looked tired, careful, afraid. That was the moment it hit me. I wasn't just unhappy, I was scared of my own husband. Fear has a way of waking you up, and mine was just beginning. It happened on a regular night. No argument, no warning. We were visiting his family when he snapped, just slightly. His tone turned sharp when I disagreed with him about something small. "Don't start," he said under his breath. It was quick, subtle, but someone noticed. Later that evening, his sister pulled me aside in the kitchen. She lowered her voice and asked, "Are you okay?" The question caught me off guard. No one had ever asked me that before. Not really. I opened my mouth to say yes, the lie was already there, but my eyes filled with tears instead. She didn't push, she didn't judge. She just said, "If you ever need to talk, I'm here." That was it. One sentence, but it cracked something open inside me. If you've ever felt seen for the first time after being invisible, stay with me. Once someone saw the truth, I couldn't unsee it anymore. After that night, my world didn't change. My vision did. Once someone asked if I was okay, I started noticing everything I had been trained to ignore. The pattern became clear. The sweetness after cruelty, the apology without accountability, the calm tone that always followed chaos. Love, tension, cruelty, silence. Over and over again. I realized he never lost control. He used it. He chose when to be kind, when to be distant, when to hurt me just enough to keep me uncertain. That's when it hit me. He wasn't confused about my feelings. He simply didn't care. I stopped blaming myself for his behavior, stopped searching for the right way to be loved by him. And the scariest truth of all, he didn't want a partner. He wanted power, wrapped in charm. And when I stopped reacting the way he expected, he noticed. The next argument was different. He raised his voice slightly, waiting for my usual response. The tears, the explanations, the apologies. But I stayed calm. No shaking, no pleading, no fear in my voice.
I looked at him and said one sentence: "You don't get to speak to me like that anymore." He laughed, but his eyes didn't. For the first time, he looked uncertain, because control only works when someone is still afraid to lose you. I didn't argue, I didn't defend myself, I simply walked away from the conversation. That silence scared him more than my tears ever did, because I wasn't breaking anymore. I was detaching. Men like him don't lose power quietly, and his next move would prove that. My silence. "You're acting different," he said. The moment I stopped reacting, everything escalated. His calm disappeared. His patience vanished. He started questioning my whereabouts, my tone, my silence. "You're acting different," he said. "What are you hiding?" When control slips, fear takes its place. He accused me of things I never did, created arguments out of nothing, tried to pull me back into chaos, but I didn't explain anymore, didn't defend myself. That scared him. Then came the emotional threats, carefully worded. "No one will believe you. You'll regret walking away. You need me more than you think." He wasn't trying to fix the marriage, he was trying to break my confidence, but I had already crossed a line inside myself. What he didn't know was that I had already made a decision. I didn't announce it. I didn't argue. I waited. I gathered documents quietly, saved small amounts of money, made plans in silence. Every smile I gave him was a goodbye he didn't hear. One morning, while he was at work, I packed only what mattered. No dramatic note, no final conversation. I walked out with shaking hands, but a steady heart. For the first time in years, I could breathe. If you're still watching, don't leave now. The ending isn't about revenge, it's about truth. I thought leaving was the hardest part, until the world started seeing who he really was. After I left, I stayed quiet. I didn't post explanations, didn't defend myself, didn't expose him. I let silence do the work. Without me there to absorb his anger, his mask began to slip. People noticed his impatience, his temper, the way kindness turned conditional. Friends started reaching out, slowly, asking careful questions, sharing things they had seen but never understood before. "You seem lighter," one of them said. We didn't realize how tense things were. For the first time, the narrative wasn't controlled by him, and suddenly, I wasn't the problem anymore. But the greatest victory had nothing to do with him. Healing didn't happen overnight. It came in quiet moments, sleeping without fear, speaking without rehearsing, laughing without permission. I learned that love doesn't confuse you. It doesn't shrink you. It doesn't ask you to disappear to be accepted. The man who was perfect in public taught me something I never expected: my strength. I am no longer silent, no longer small, no longer afraid. And if you're listening to this, wondering if your feelings are real, they are. If this story touched your heart, like this video so it reaches someone who needs it. Subscribe for more real emotional stories, and comment "I see you," because your story matters too.